Hi there, my name is Dr. Katie Saint, and this video is about talking to your child about their autism diagnosis. This is a really important conversation to have, and the timing of it can be tricky. A lot of times people fear that if they tell their child that they have an autism diagnosis, that their child will feel bad or they'll use it as an excuse. But it doesn't have to be that way. Having an autism diagnosis is not a bad thing. There are a lot of really amazing things about autism. So that's why it's really important when you talk to your child about their diagnosis that you help them see and understand that there are some truly amazing things about having autism. And so one question that comes up is, when should I tell my child about their autism diagnosis? And there is not a hard and fast answer for that. Some kids you're going to tell at a younger age, some kids you're going to tell at an older age. But there's some indicators that can help you decide. So one is that they're starting to make comments and they're starting to notice that they're a little bit different from their peers. Or maybe they're having some struggles and those struggles are frustrating for them, and the struggles are related to their autism diagnosis. If that's the case, explaining the diagnosis and helping them understand that this is why you're struggling, but don't worry, there's help for that, and we can work through that, and we can figure this out so that it's not causing you pain, so it's not a struggle anymore. Another reason is if you feel like they would enjoy knowing, if they would appreciate learning about themselves. A lot of people with an autism diagnosis are very logical, appreciate science and facts and things like that, and so it might be really interesting to them, and they might appreciate understanding that their brain works a little bit different, and so they can learn then how to use that to their benefit and what areas they need to compensate for. Every human alive has strengths and weaknesses in their personality, and the more that we are aware of it, the more we can be successful with those strengths and weaknesses. So that's part of the process of what we're trying to do and learn as we teach our child about their autism diagnosis. So some things that are important for your child to understand when you begin to have this conversation is that every single person with an autism diagnosis is different. It's a spectrum disorder. So there is a severe end, and then there is the end of the spectrum where you can barely tell at all that the person has autism. And so symptoms are going to look different on different people. And now the Asperger's diagnosis has gone away with the new DSM, so everybody falls under the umbrella of autism. So helping your child understand where they land on this spectrum can kind of help them to see the full picture. So one important thing for them to understand is that having an autism diagnosis is not an excuse to get out of things. It's not an excuse for failure or to not have relationships or to not get a job or not do chores or anything like that. People with autism are as capable or more than the rest of us for being successful in life. And so, we need to not look at this as a reason to hold ourselves back. And so when you talk to your child about their diagnosis, this is an important message for them to bring home. So along those lines too, it's really important for them to understand that it's not a bad thing to have this diagnosis. They can be successful, and so what you can do is you can go through the symptoms of autism, you can go through the traits. There's actually a ton of workbooks that you can buy to go through with your child so they can learn about themselves. They can learn about the common symptoms, and they can learn about what the struggles are and what the strengths are, and they can identify in and of themselves what what is true about them. And through that, then, they can identify plans and things that they can do, things they want to change or work on, things they want to really focus on and develop more because it's a strength of theirs. So this conversation should be super positive and encouraging. You know, there's famous people like Steve Jobs or Dan Aykroyd, Bill Gates, who people suspect having autism. You know, drawing attention to successful people who maybe have this diagnosis can help illustrate the point that having autism is not a bad thing, and in a lot of ways it's something to be really proud of. Take, for example, I'm super jealous of the memory of a lot of people with autism. Sometimes people with an autism diagnosis have insane memories that's just so impressive and that can really help them academically. So going to graduate school, for example, could be easier in some ways because of how quickly they can memorize things. So go through the traits with your child, see their strengths, celebrate their strengths. You know, look for ways to help them understand and appreciate the diagnosis. So some things to avoid saying is that there's something wrong with them, or that they won't be successful, or they won't have friendships, because none of those things are true. They're not true at all. And so make sure this is framed in a way that is encouraging and empowering, because having an autism diagnosis is not a bad thing, and it's not an excuse to get out of things or to lower your standards for future success. All right, if you have more questions on this topic, please feel free to contact me and we can discuss it more individually to your child.